Hi everyone, thanks for joining in. I'm excited to have Genevieve Novak joining me today. Ge-
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Genevieve is a writer from Melbourne. She writes romantic comedies, content, and really long text messages. While studying creative writing at the University of Adelaide, she wrote essays, fiction, and film and music reviews for a student magazine. She has worked as a copywriter, social media manager, and producer at various marketing agencies. Genevieve loves croissants, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Joni Mitchell, stories about complicated women and female friendships, and her dog Victor. She always has dog hair on her clothes, which I can totally relate to. And she hates being called Jen and has been on a lot of bad dates,
So many bad
which
days.
I can imagine are good
It's
material for
source
your books.
material. Yeah, if nothing else, now it's a learning experience and something positive to come from them. But the bad dates have not stopped, no matter what I'm doing.
So thanks so much, Genevieve, for joining us. Just want to say, if you move slightly over, people can see your book. No Hard Feelings is your latest book, and I've got a copy here that I've just been reading, and have to say, really enjoyed it. It's
Thank you.
a bit of some serious things, but also a bit of comedy in that as well, which I
Yeah,
enjoyed. Do you want?
a good balance of light and dark
Yeah,
there.
exactly. Do you want to start off by telling us a bit about No Hard Feelings?
Yeah, so in short, it's a rom-com about a woman having a nervous breakdown, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Penny is in that awful moment in her late 20s where everything has just completely fallen apart and nothing is where she expected it to be, especially as she reaches that point in her life. She's got this dreadful boyfriend that she can't get rid of. All of her friends seem to be doing better than she is. Her boss has something against her and she just can't seem to get it right. And that all happens at once and makes for a bit of a time for her, a bit of a learning experience.
Mm.
And yeah, it's a sweet little rom com that deals with both mental health and just growing up.
Mm. And what was the first idea you had for your book?
So I always wanted to write in this genre because I like reading it. It's the kind of satisfaction of finding a character that you either relate to or see your friends in and things like that. So I love a rom com, and so I set
Mm.
out to write a straight rom com. And the first couple of drafts of this didn't have a therapy element of it whatsoever, which is surprising because of how much it features in the final edit. So I set out to write a sweet little rom com, and then
Mm.
the further I got into it, the more I needed a space to understand Penny and the decisions that she makes. And it made sense to delve into her past and get into therapy in that way.
And have you found like readers have reached out to you and said how much they relate
Yeah,
to the character?
that seems to be the most common feedback is, did you spy on me to write this book? Because this sounds just like my life, which is lovely, obviously, but also awful
Mm.
because Penny has such a rough go of it. So it's comforting that so many of us had that experience of our late 20s
Mm.
or any period of our 20s and 30s and 40s. But the relatability seems to be the biggest thing for Penny, and especially because she's quite a frustrating character. So knowing that people are connecting with her and not just hating her
Mm.
is nice.
Mm. And when you decided to write the book, could you just take us a bit on the journey? Like, how long did it take to write, and then how about getting it published? How did you go about all
So
that?
from the first day I sat down to write it to the day that I submitted it off to agents and publishers was
Mm.
probably a little under 18 months.
Mm.
So a speedy one in that regard, because so many authors talk about spending 5-10 years on their manuscripts. But I was very fortunate to have to live in Melbourne and to have COVID lockdown hit all through 2020 and 2021. So I had nothing to do but
Lots of
write
time for
through that
writing.
time.
Yeah.
And like the kind of looming pressure to get that done was born mostly of my 30th birthday was in mid 2021. So I needed to get this book done by my 30th birthday just to, satisfy myself that I had achieved something by that age. So 18 months is a very quick turnaround from, the worst rough draft through to something that I was proud to send out. And from there, it only went even faster. So if I submitted it in, I think it was May, June 2021, and we had a book deal ready by September of that year, and then it was published in March of 2022.
Wow. Yeah,
so
that's
really,
pretty,
really fast.
That is quick, yeah. And what have you found? Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a minute.
I do that constantly.
What are you doing now? Are you writing something at the moment?
I am. So I'm working on my second novel at the moment, and that one is due in a few weeks. So I really shouldn't be doing anything or leaving my desk at all, or certainly not seeing friends or going on bad dates or anything. I should just be writing only. So I'm, a decent way of the way through that, but it's very much in a moment that a lot of authors will relate to, where everything is starting to come together, but you're pretty convinced that you have no talent and it's a mess and you should just call off the whole thing and delete it and never mention it to anyone ever again. So we'll see how we go in a couple more weeks when I push through that.
And is that a bit of a rom-com as well?
It is. This one's a little lighter than No Hard Feelings. I think the trauma that I put poor Penny through was a lot for me to go through as well. So I'm giving myself a little bit of a break with this one. This girl so far hasn't had a nervous breakdown, but at this point in Penny's manuscript, she hadn't either. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But it is a rom-com, and so far it's about a serial monogamist who decides to quit dating and doesn't do a very good job of it.
And do you have like any rom-com authors that inspire you or you aspire to be like?
I mean, I'll read anything basically, and I go out of my way to read female authors who obviously dominate the genre of rom-coms. So, you can't go past a Zoe Foster Blake or Emily Henry, two just powerhouses of rom-coms, and so those are my comfort reads. I'm reading You and Me on Vacation by Emily Henry at the moment, and it's just a little cupcake of a book. It's just so lovely and such a lovely little escape, especially when I can't go on vacation anywhere. So those are two of my faves. But your Helen Fielding with Bridget Jones and things, there are comfort reads that you go back to that are just timeless always.
Yeah. And we've got quite a few people watching, so just reminding the people watching that if you have a question for Genevieve, please type it in comments and I'll be able to read it out to her. We've got a few questions here. Kelly wonders, how many books are you planning to publish by your 40th? Because you said about
I'm
publishing
at the
first...
moment, so I'm not sure. I mean, let's say, just pulling it, this is the first time I've ever thought the question, 5. Let's say 5.
Yeah.
That
a good
seems
number.
more sustainable than at the moment it's a book a year, and 10 seems exhausting. So let's go with 5.
And Kelly also wonders, what's been the hardest thing in getting your book published?
It honestly has been a pretty easy experience getting it published, which is a yucky thing to say, especially because authors, I think all we ever hear is how hard it is to get published. So I went into it really bracing myself for a lot of rejection that didn't come because I was quite fortunate in the whole process. So my process to getting published was that I worked with a writing group who recommended me to a manuscript assessor. The manuscript assessor put me in touch with a handful of agents that she thought would be a good fit, and from there it kind of went quite easily. So the process for getting published wasn't particularly difficult, but things like the editing process is never super fun because you're so attached to what you're doing. And then mostly it's been the waiting, because like I said, it went so fast, but it feels like so long. It's, it's a lifelong dream. You just want it to happen right now. So those those 6 months where we'd finished the book, we'd sent it off, and it was just time to wait was absolute agony.
Yeah. And what was the favourite part for you of your publishing journey so far?
My favorite part was getting a physical copy of it and, flipping through, and my name's on every other page, and all of my silly little thoughts out in print and, for people to see. And, getting reviews is always a mixed bag. Some people really love it. Some people don't love it so much, but largely everyone's been pretty lovely about it. And so, the whole experience has just been a dream. And getting, extremely champagne drunk at my book launch was certainly a highlight, but I don't remember that one quite as shock-flicking.
Where was your book launch?
I just threw myself a party at a lovely rooftop bar here in Melbourne,
nice.
because it was, very important to celebrate this momentous occasion. So dragged all my friends out into the cold and rain to, really hit the open bar really hard. And no, it was a really, really lovely time.
And could you tell us a bit about the research you did for No Hard Feelings?
A lot of it was rooted in, it's not autobiographical by any stretch, but certainly it's rooted in familiar experiences of, things that versions of things that I've been through, or my friends, or things like that. I guess the kind of biggest piece of research was more around the therapy side of things, because I have a therapist. I see her all the time. I love her to death, but we only talk about my issues, of course. So I can't claim that being through therapy qualifies me to give therapy to another character. But so in wanting to give an accurate portrayal of therapy, and in wanting, if someone is relating to Penny and I'm writing completely batshit advice that is going to ruin their life. So I went into quite a bit of research to see the best way to frame that and the kind of best advice to give her. But, Penny does exactly what Penny wants to do and doesn't really listen to the therapist's advice regardless.
No. Did you run anything past your therapist?
I did. By the time it was finished, I think my therapist was the second or third person to read the finished manuscript. So I wanted to make sure that, even in all my independent research, it's all still quite subjective. So, I gave her the homework of, please make sure that I haven't said anything totally disastrous on this. And she quite liked it. So that's the important thing. That's the seal of approval.
Yeah. And Belinda wonders if you know how your book will end when you start writing.
I do. Some authors are really good at just sitting down and writing and just seeing where it takes them. I am not that good. I need the structure and the organization. So I sit down and I have a spreadsheet that has, each act and kind of what needs to be achieved per act, and then every scene that has to happen within it. And that includes notes for subplots and time and location and all of that. So it's all very, very structured. By the time I sit down to write, I already have it all mapped out. With Penny and with this second manuscript, you get part of the way into it and go, oh, the way this character is turning out doesn't quite fit with the storyline. So you might go in and restructure it here and there. But largely the arc of, where she starts, where she ends, and in a rom-com, who she ends up with, is pretty structured from the beginning. And of course you have to, especially with a love interest, you have to craft them in a way that is consistently appealing but slightly out of reach. So it certainly can't be a surprise for that. But, and again, it's a rom-com. It's supposed to have a happy ending. So I always, I know that she's going to end up okay. Whether she's completely okay and everything's fine forever, probably not. But the happy ending is a non-negotiable there.
And is Penny a character you think you could write about again?
Probably not anytime soon. I spent so long with her and got to know her so well, and obviously got quite close to her. I want to give her a break. But it might be interesting to see where she is in 10 years. Once maybe it's the 40th birthday, 10-year anniversary of the book is that's the story I'll write. But for the moment, man, she has earned her happy ending. I'm just going to leave her alone.
And had writing been something you always thought you would do?
Yeah. I wrote a lot as a teenager, just little short stories and really terrible fiction. And then once it was time to go to uni, I kind of wanted to go into film just because I enjoyed storytelling, and that was my kind of preferred medium at the time. But I'm not a visual person at all. I can't figure out why something looks good or how to make it look good. So film wasn't the right medium for that talent. And so I, found my way back to writing again. So I got a degree in creative writing, and that was obviously non-stop writing. That was fiction, non-fiction, essays, poetry, the whole spectrum. And then once I left uni and it was time to get a job, I got work as a copywriter and a content writer. So I've been writing in some capacity for a long time. And it's always been in the back of my mind to write a novel. And it was only really the pressure of turning 30 and, a bunch of other younger authors were starting to crop up and be much more successful than I could ever dream of. And I went, that's not fair. Wait, it is fair. I haven't written anything. They're entitled to their success. I can't complain if I'm not doing anything about it. So partially motivated by spite to get that written, but it got written.
And along your writing journey, have you had someone who's really encouraged your writing?
I mean, as having my degree obviously was around a lot of other writers. So I've got friends who are in similar boats who have similar dreams and goals and things. So it's really helpful to have that little writing community around you. And my writing group that got me through lockdown was both a wonderful source of support and a wonderful motivator and teacher, because you're constantly getting exposed to different styles of writing. My writing group mostly writes literary fiction and sci-fi and fantasy, which is obviously a world away from fluffy rom-coms. But sticking, within your genre can get you a little bit stuck, and you can lose kind of sight of the bigger picture or get stuck within tropes and forget to push against them. So it was really helpful to have that, and to every couple of weeks I had to submit a chapter for them to get through. So it was a good motivator to keep working. And they're still completely lovely, even though I'm a terrible writing club member now and hardly ever go to meetings.
And Kelly wonders if you could share your favourite romantic moment
of the book. My favourite scene, full stop, of the whole book was the kitchen scene after Penny's birthday. And no spoilers, obviously, but that was one of the first scenes that I wrote. I tend to write chronologically, but this one just, I think it was, waiting for the kettle to boil or something, and was just typing on my phone and got the scene out almost word perfect. It's hardly changed at all since that very first draft, and that was my favorite. It just came so easily, and it was such a nice moment of it. Had obviously built to there, and it was nice to kind of grant them that. So that was my favorite, and I still sometimes that'll be, if I go back to reread anything, that's the bit that I reread. That's my fave.
Yeah. And Belinda wonders if you have a favorite childhood book.
Favorite childhood book. I mean, I think we're all partial to our Harry Potters. Our current political preferences aside, they do have a real moment of nostalgia. And I don't, I wasn't a big reader as a child until I got into Harry Potter. And I only read Harry Potter because my mom said that I had to read them before I saw the movies. So we read those and fell in love with it. And that, made me fall in love with writing. And I still sometimes revisit those books. I probably read one from the series a year just because they're such lovely little relics of childhood, and also because I'm terrible at reading aloud, so I read them aloud to my dog, who's a wonderful audience, and he loves it. He crawls up on my chest and just listens. So that's that's sweet.
Hence why you have dog hair everywhere.
Yes, it's constant. Black is not an option in my house.
And do you have any writing rituals?
I mean, routines. Rituals probably isn't the right word for it, but certainly routines. Because I still work full time, I don't get to write that much during the week. And when I do, it's evenings and just bits and pieces here and there. So my weekend rituals, routines, writing is to take myself out for a coffee and a croissant, come home and sit down and eat that and drink my coffee and catch up on what I've got to do for the day. So that's as close as I get to a writing ritual. I probably should have developed something more interesting for interviews, something really close to keeping. But no, just the pastry and the caffeine, those are the important things.
Yeah. And a favourite place to write?
Here, this is my little office. Again, COVID was great for me in it crashed rent prices, so I managed to get a place with a second bedroom. So now I have a little bubble to write in, and it stops me from if I try and write in my living room, I just end up watching TV and getting nothing done, and then being surprised when my book hasn't materialized. So this is my little bubble. I can't write in public. I annoyingly sometimes do my best writing on my phone if I'm on the tram or something. It's never when I'm expecting it, and it's certainly not when I'm sitting down slaving away trying to get something written. But the best writing seems to come from my phone, especially for dialogue and things. It just is easy in that way.
And do you wake up in the middle of the night and have to write something?
I've done that before. I've woken up from a dream and gone, this is the best idea, and written it down and typed it into my phone. And then in the morning, it's just absolute nonsense. And I've woken up so excited, like, yes, I've cracked that thing. It's done. It's just going to write itself. Open my notes. What the hell was I thinking? That doesn't mean who's baby? What? Baby? What? So my subconscious is doing its best, but it's not great.
And are you someone who likes to share as you write?
I mean, I do with like my writing group was really helpful the first time around, and I've certainly missed that this time. Of very generous friends who will sit through my terrible first draft chapters and read them for me. So I enjoy it in small doses, but I certainly couldn't publish to an audience of more than 5 very close friends, just because you don't appreciate how much your final draft will be completely different from your first, and so sharing anything in a draft state is probably going to get scrapped or at least heavily rewritten.
And what sort of things have you been able to do to promote No Hard Feelings?
So I've done a handful of fun, cool things, stuff like this, little interviews, some podcasty things. I've done a couple of events. I did a really lovely event at a bookstore on the other side of town last week, where we just did basically a round table and had a chat about the book and the writing process with a lot of wine that I very quickly regretted. So that's been really lovely. Places like Booktopia and kind of other book selling platforms have been nice and involved with like TikTok content, which makes me feel ancient trying to do it and trying to understand this platform. So there's been a nice handful of things. It's largely been social media driven, just because it's still a pandemic, still hard to travel, still hard to get out and do things. But that suits me because I'm a massive introvert, and not having to leave the house or put on anything except pajama pants is great.
And have any readers said anything about your book that's really surprised you?
I mean, it certainly surprised me how many of us have a Max, the terrible boyfriend from the book. I have a handful of them. All of my friends have at least one. But I thought maybe that would be a selection bias kind of thing. But no, we all truly have one of those boyfriends from somewhere in our teens or 20s that really messes us up and really shapes the way we look at future relationships. So that's a little bit sad, but it's also, again, a unifying thing that we all have one. That's been surprising. Otherwise people have just been super, super lovely about it. And as a deeply insecure person, anything kind of negative that anyone's had to say, I've already stressed about before and thought that was the case. So it hasn't been terribly surprising in that way. Even when someone just hated it, which, happens. There are wonderful books that are very popular that everyone loves that I just didn't connect to. It's fine if people don't like them or didn't connect with it in the same way. I've already looked at it through that awful negative lens and thought every bad thing you can think about the book myself. So no, largely it's been just super lovely.
No, that's good to hear. And you certainly can't please everybody.
No, and that's, the reason why people love things as hard as they do is because they're subjective and, because it speaks to you personally. Nothing is universally beloved. And some of my absolute favorite books that, my Desert Island books, have terrible reviews from people because they just didn't connect with it in the same way. And that's just fine. That's the risk you take when you put something creative out there.
Yeah, exactly. And do you have any advice that you could give a new writer?
My advice would just be getting it in front of people, continuing to write and refine and to push through. But getting it in front of people is my most helpful piece of advice, because I can write in an echo chamber and just rewrite the same things over and over and over, and I won't pick up on little details or missing pieces until someone completely properly objective, not just my lovely supportive friends, but objective in writing groups or just strangers who will have something to say that will unlock the whole thing. So I certainly would never have been published without my writing group having kind of shown me the way in those very early chapters and kind of supporting through the process. So new writers just, it's very cliche advice to just write and to just get it done, and to read constantly from different genres. But once you've done all of that, writing groups is the number one best piece of advice. And once you've got it in a shape that you're happy with, people like professional editors and manuscript assessors have been really, really helpful for me as well.
Well, thanks so much for chatting with me. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
Before you go, do you want to let people know how they can keep in touch with you?
Yeah, so Instagram is probably the easiest way for me. It's Genevieve, GENEVIEVE.NVK on Instagram, or my website has an email option if you want to chat and complain about your Macs. I'm full of stories about mine and love that stuff. So reach out, have a chat, go buy the book or borrow it from your library. It's a lot of fun. And I hope you relate to it, but not too hard.
Well, thanks so much. And thanks also to everyone who joined in and the questions that people asked.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Good night.